I think I have a very flexible relationship now with like money and earning money. And I don't have a sense of I need this one job to pay me this salary to this thing. Like I just am feeling like, what are my income sources and like which ways are the money coming to me? And yeah, it doesn't feel like I need to control it in any one way. It's like I just can sort of trust that it's coming in while I'm sharing my gifts, and it just feels a lot more freeing.
Welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast, the show where we teach you how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want.
Doctor!
Now, here's your host, Dr. Alex Schloe.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I am your host, Dr. Alex Schloe, and today we have a really special episode with Dr. Chelsea Turgeon. She is an incredible entrepreneur. She was an MD who turned six-figure coach, best-selling author, global traveler, and we talk a ton about her amazing travel experiences and these awesome bucket list experiences that she's had. She's also the host of the Life After Medicine podcast, and we talk about her journey in medicine and how she just kind of felt stuck after graduating med school and starting her OBGYN residency. And she resigned from residency during the second year and bought a one-way ticket to South Korea to teach English. And that led to her ultimately creating a thriving coaching business, living more of a digital nomad life, and experiencing an absolutely incredible amount of freedom, which is what she wanted. That was her dream. And she has been able to achieve that. And she loves teaching others how they can get unstuck in their job as a physician or a healthcare worker. This was a really cool podcast episode, and we mentioned at the end a virtual summit called Pivot Potential that will be happening in June that she's putting on that's completely free, and it's going to be an incredible opportunity. So without any further ado, let's get started with today's episode with Dr. Chelsea Turgeon. Dr. Chelsea Turgeon, welcome to the Physicians and Properties Podcast. I am so glad to have you as a guest on the podcast today. And you're calling in from Mexico City, which I think is the furthest that someone's called in from to be a guest on the podcast. So that's really cool as well. How are things going?
So good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited for a conversation today.
Absolutely. I've been following your journey on LinkedIn, and it's been absolutely amazing to see and really cool to see Life After Medicine and everything that you talk about there in that space. But before we get to that and everything that you've built, do you mind just sharing a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Alabama, and I was very in small town, rural Alabama. I went to undergrad there, med school there, all of that. Growing up, not like I had this big dream to be a doctor. No one in my family was a doctor. I just knew I wanted to help people. I loved psychology. I was a big nerd in personal growth. And so I would literally have my parents drop me off at Books A Million. And it's really before internet is you're not finding blogs and stuff on the internet. So I'm going to Books A Million, and I would read, go to the self-help aisles and read different books. And I felt like such a loser. So I didn't want to tell anyone. I was telling them I'm going to study. But then I'd go and read all these books about happiness and the psychology of rejection. And so I just always had this drive towards learning about psychology. So then I majored in psychology in undergrad. And in my limited mind, the way a lot of us view careers, it's career paths have major, and then major unlocks these options. And then you choose between these options. It's kind of how we're viewing career in this really linear way. And so I was okay, major in psychology. What can I do with that? I can go to grad school and get a PhD in psychology and be a clinical therapist was one general thought. And then the other one was med school and do psychiatry. Those were I was those are my two options, although there's so many more than that, but that's what I thought. When I would present this to people, I would get so much validation around, med school. You must be really smart if you go to med school. And so I would just pick up on this of oh, okay, I think I'm going to do med school, because anytime I share that, people are really impressed. And I think this is how a lot of us kind of go through and make our early career decisions, maybe not exactly for validation, but there's a lot of superficial factors that go into it because we don't know ourselves. Our frontal lobes are not developed, and we just we don't have a sense of who we really are or what our values are. And so these are the things I'm using to make, these are my metrics for making my career decisions. So I choose to go into med school for all of those reasons. And I get into med school, I quickly realize psychiatry is not what I want to do. The doctor-patient relationship that I see within psychiatry, I'm no, this is not what I want. I didn't like doing the mental status exam. You're kind of just judging them the whole time, which is just what you're doing. You're observing them. But I'm I don't feel like I'm relating to them. I feel like I'm putting them in these boxes, and So that didn't feel right. So then I was like, crap, I'm in med school. What do I do? And I didn't feel like I could just stop at that point, nor did that seem like what I wanted. So I was like, I need to choose something else. And so I ended up choosing OBGYN, truthfully, because it was the one I hated the least out of everything else. And I think the reason it appealed to me was because I have ADHD, where there's a lot of action that happens. And so, you go to internal medicine and it's like, I'm falling asleep because we're just like sitting at a table talking all day. And I'm like, this cannot be my future. So then I was like, oh, but in OBGYN, we're really active. So I literally, again, kind of superficial reasons, go into that and choose that. And I get into my residency and just pretty soon realize it's just not the right path for me. Like it never was. Through this whole thing, I'm choosing things for the wrong reasons. When I say wrong, the reasons that are not correct because they're not based on my own true path. They're just based on random factors that seem relevant at the time. And so, yeah, I get into residency, realize it's not the right path for me, and do like soul searching work, which we can go into more detail about. But then I just make the decision during my second year of residency that I'm just going to leave. Yeah, like hit a point of burnout. It was sort of this moment of like, I need to make a decision one way or another. I'm going to leave. So I decided to resign, and I wasn't resigning to like go do something else in the medical world or go into pharma. Like I was like, I'm going to drop out of residency and then buy a one-way ticket to South Korea because that's a good idea. And like, honestly, when I look back, I'm like, what was I doing? But it totally worked out. So yeah, I bought a one-way ticket to South Korea. I started teaching English. I got a job there teaching English. And then like on the side, I was learning how to build a business. And so that's really what I've been doing since then. I've been building my business and traveling around the world. And, we can go into many more details about it, but that's just sort of the short-ish version of my backstory.
That's an amazing story and super relatable journey. I'm sure that there's plenty of folks who, were in med school and realize like, this isn't my path, or in residency, similar to you. And you're like, hey, this isn't my path. And a lot of times I feel like we get tracked by the golden stethoscope of like our golden handcuffs of like, hey, we've gone down this path and it is a respectable career field and we're doing a lot of good. And then it's kind of like, oh man, what do I do? I've already put forth all this time and effort, and not to mention money that goes into that. And so it's really honorable that you, one, realize like, hey, this path isn't for me. And two, that you were like, hey, I would much rather pivot and go figure out my path in my life instead of sticking with a profession that I didn't love, And I think that is probably something that folks have struggled with to some degree, and maybe not to the degree of like, hey, medicine's not for me, or this isn't for me, but maybe to the point of like, hey, maybe I need to think about going and doing a fellowship or maybe even doing another residency or something like that. So thanks for sharing that and being vulnerable in that regard.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's hard to admit that the thing you're pouring your heart into, you're pouring time, you're pouring money, you're like the thing you wanted at one point, and then you put so much into it and then you get it. It's really hard to look at that and be like, actually, this isn't what I want anymore. Maybe it never was. Maybe it was at a point and now it's no longer right. But it's just so hard to look at your circumstances and just be like, that was a good guess, but it's actually not it.
Yeah, absolutely. So South Korea, how'd you land on that? That is not the place I would ever expect. So how did you end up going to South Korea?
I love people's responses to that. So sometimes when I tell my story, I'm like, let me give as few details as possible and just like see what they're latching onto so that then I like can go further. Because sometimes I think it's fun to just say it for the shock factor because it doesn't make any sense, right? So, because if you also know other things about me, like I didn't travel at that point.
mentioned you mentioned rural Alabama, stayed in Alabama for med school, stayed in Alabama for residency. Like it sounds like not a whole lot of travel outside of Alabama.
Yeah.
So that's what makes the South Korea more shocking. The only thing that would make your story more wild would be North Korea, I think.
Yes, I love that. I love that for me. That's not what happened. I wouldn't have been able to go there. It would have been a different story, a different timeline for sure. But so South Korea, it sort of came through like honestly a process of elimination. And so what I did was I moved through a process called I call it now directional clarity. At the time, I didn't call it anything because I was just like, what do I do? But when I look at it now and I guide clients through it now, it's like directional clarity. And so what I mean by that is I had this desire I was like, I want to leave medicine. Like medicine is not it. Like that felt so clear, not this. What felt less clear was what is my this, right? But I don't know what else. That's another reason it's very difficult for people to leave because there's this known entity that they maybe don't love, but it's known. And until you're replacing it for something known and something you're excited about, it's hard to just walk towards an ambiguous blob of, I don't know. So one way we work around that is directional clarity. And so it's like, what do I know? The things that felt really true for me at that point and it didn't quite make sense, but it just felt really true. I want to be outside. I want to have the ability to work from my laptop from a cafe and then travel anywhere. That's like honestly what I knew. And I didn't know if I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I didn't know, like there was a lot of pieces I didn't know, but it felt like that was enough to get started, right? So then it's like, okay, what do I do remotely? I don't exactly know, but whatever it is, I can't just do it right away. It's gonna take time to build up, or like maybe it's a job and I have to train for a thing. So like I had this idea that like the thing I want, I can make it happen, but I don't think I can like support myself on it right away. So then what does that mean? I probably need to get some kind of income source because I'm a resident and I don't have any savings. So it's like the moment my resident salary is done, I'm living with my parents. And I was like, that's not what's going to happen. So it's like, I'm just kind of going through this whole problem solving process of like, I need a runway. And so in my mind, I was like, whatever my remote laptop thing is, unknown, it's going to require 2 years for me to build it up. I just decided this, 2 years for me to build it up. So I need a job I can do for 2 years that pays my bills, that doesn't suck so bad that I'm burned out by the end of it. You know, I was like, I just need like a make ends meet job, pay the bills. And then I was like, but I want to do it like abroad. Like if I want to start traveling, I want to just already travel. And so one of the things I found is like, you can just teach English abroad, and places that pay best are Asia. That's where they like give you room and board. They give you healthcare. They give you all those things. And so I was like, well, maybe I'll just do that. Cause it's like, I don't have to, I was on a residency salary. It's not like I was making a ton of money. And so I just like found this idea, and I was like, let me just try that. I wanted something I could get easily. I didn't want to have to like interview for jobs and make that a big thing. I wanted it to be a job I could just sort of quote unquote like phone in, where it's not like a lot of mental energy. And so, yeah, I learned you could just get certified online to teach English as a foreign language. And then you could just get a job teaching English in South Korea. And so I just did it. And then South Korea, like it was, I don't remember exactly why I chose South Korea, but it was something like the money they paid you and the benefits you had, like it just seemed like the best package deal. And then it's also more of a developed country as opposed to going to like Vietnam right away or Thailand or Cambodia. You know, I was like, let me go somewhere where like it's really built up so I don't shock myself too much.
Yeah, and Korean food is amazing.
And it's the best in Korea. So if you like it outside of Korea, you have to go because
my stepmom is half
different.
Korean. So I'm like, and she says the same thing. And I'm like, I have to go there at some point.
Yes.
I am still active duty in the Air Force for a little while longer. So Korea is not someplace that they like us to go unless we're being stationed. So that'll have to wait for a bit.
Okay.
But
well, you have your stepmom. She can bring you the food.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Were you making more teaching English than you were in residency if you were to like figure it out hourly?
Hourly, absolutely. Even if I figure it out based on, I got an apartment paid for in South Korea. So I wasn't paying that, right? And so if we think take home after like taking the apartment out of it, I had more in my pocket at the end of the day.
That is wild.
By working 35 hours a week, not even the whole time. I had to be in the school during 35 hours a week. And then I got a big bonus at the end. So I don't even think I calculated all of that into it. But even just like my monthly stuff. Yeah. Like one day at the end of my contract, I just had like $7,000 deposited into my account, and which I didn't realize was happening. And so it's like, if you factor all of that in, it was a much better gig.
That is wild that you can make more teaching English in Asia than being a resident OBGYN physician. That's crazy. That's so cool. And what a cool experience for you. What were some things that you learned in that journey, you know, as you were teaching English? You're probably processing a lot. And I'm sure, and feel free to speak on it, I feel like I'm sure it was a difficult process for you to realize like, hey, this isn't, residency is not right for me. It's time to hang up the white coat. I'm sure that was a difficult process. And then moving from Alabama to South Korea, like I'm sure a lot of things were going on. So what were some of those emotions, things that you were experiencing during that time?
Yeah. And just a quick correction, it's really not that important, but I actually did residency in Pittsburgh. So I was there for like a year and a half. And so then I had a moment in a big city with an airport. but yeah, moving, no, it's all good. I didn't share that before, but yeah. So going into South Korea and just, so it's like basically what I did. And when I look at it now, it's when I started doing my life coaching certification, the thing they call it that I did is like habitat liquidation, where you change your job, you change your environment, and you change your friend group. Like I changed literally everything about my life in like a week. And I did it very quickly. So 1 week in February, I was in the hospital finishing up. I had already turned in my resignation, but I was finishing stuff up. And then the next week, I was literally in a classroom talking to third grade Korean students. So it was like, what?
It's amazing.
Jarring.
Yeah. It doesn't get any faster than that. Yeah.
It just not. It was jarring. And I think for some people, it would not work. For me, I think it was good because there's something that happens when you have like you're working hardcore all the time and then you have downtime and you don't really know what to do with yourself. And so I think for me, it was a good titration, like a down titration of, okay, I was working 80 hours a week in the hospital ish. And then now I go to this place where I have a full-time job, but it feels like a part-time job. So one of the things that happened, which is so funny, where I looked at my schedule, there was this one moment where like someone was trying to ask me about a weekend, like, oh, well, what if we do this weekend? And it was like a few months in advance. And my first thought was, we have to check the call schedule. And then I was like, no, I don't have to check the call schedule. And then it just all hit me. I have every single weekend off from now until forever.
That is a blessing.
Like it just felt like so much freedom. I was like, I can't ever imagine someone complaining about a 9 to 5. You just go Monday through Friday. How is that a problem? And so that was like really cool to have just weekend freedom. And it's like I started to titrate my freedom. So that was one big thing that was like incredible. One thing that was interesting was noticing like when I felt the need to still identify myself as a doctor. So it was so interesting where I'm meeting people, right? And a lot of people doing this are kind of fresh out of college and they're like doing a gap year, right? And so sometimes I'm just like, yeah, I just left the States too. And I don't feel the need to like go deep. Like, if I'm meeting someone and we're going deep, like it's not like I'm hiding my story. So there's some times where I just like don't need to point it out. But then there's some circumstances, I think when I would feel more insecure or something where I was like, I need people to know that I went to med school. And like, but it was interesting how it would like come out. And I was like, oh, wow, I'm still clinging to that. I'm still like needing to identify myself in that way. And so that's something that happened during that year. And it just sort of gradually started to go down. But it was a weird like identity shift. And that's something I work with my clients through as well. It's just, you identify so deeply by your profession. And so then when you're not that anymore, you're just a little disoriented.
Yeah, that's definitely something I've come across. This will probably be close to episode 100 of the podcast. And it's, folks that have left medicine, that's definitely something that they struggle with. It's like, hey, what is my identity outside of the white coat? And, of course, we all wear multiple different hats, spouse or partner, parent, doctor, all those sorts of things. But it seems like you're right. Like the profession identity really weighs heavy. And I think maybe heavier for doctors just because it takes so long, so much effort, so much time and energy to become a physician that, and it's a respected thing in society. And I think that, we value that as well. And we want people to know like, hey, look at me, I'm a doctor. And so I can't imagine that would be difficult. That was something I was going to ask you. So thanks for letting me know. How long did it take before you felt comfortable, just not even bringing that up at all if you didn't need to?
Yeah. And it was less time as it was replacement identity, I guess, if that's what we're going into it. Well, okay. Yeah. So it was less time. It was more discovering who I actually am outside of medicine. Cause I just you don't really have time to develop other identities. They're just sort of stunted because you're just, spending so much time on that. So now that I had more time, it's like, oh, now I really like to hike. And so I hiked the whole island that I was staying on in South Korea, because I'm not casual so much. And so it was like 264 miles. Yeah. So I hiked that. So it's like now I have different interests I'm starting to identify with. Now I have like this new thing I'm starting to build, right? I'm training as a life coach. And as a part of that, I challenged myself, again, I'm not casual, challenged myself to do 100 hours of coaching just like for free. And so every English teacher on the island, I'm like, hey, do you have something in your life you want to work on? Let me coach you. I want to practice this skill. And so it's not even that I stopped identifying as a doctor or like that went down. It's just other ones went up. And I think that's the best way, in my opinion, to replace it, because then you're not in this like identity deficit, if that's the thing. You're just developing other parts of you, and then it just doesn't feel relevant anymore.
That is really cool. I don't want to gloss over the 264-mile hike around the island. I'm a huge and avid hiker as well. Yeah. So I would love to hear more about that. How long did that take you? What did that journey look like for you?
Yeah, this is so cool. This is a very uncommon thing that people do in South Korea. Like people don't really know about this, but I was staying on an island called Jeju Island. And on that island, there's a series of trails that goes around the outside. So whenever you do get to go to Korea, I feel like this would be really cool for you. And they're called the Ole trails. And you get like a passport. And I think there's how many? Like 20 something different trails, right? So they're divided into different trails and you can do the whole thing. So some people go in and like they're on vacation and they hike the whole thing. I was doing it on my weekends because I had my weekend freedom. So every weekend I would just like take a bus to wherever I had left off before. And I would do maybe like one or two of the trails, depending on how long they were. And so that was just sort of my weekend project. And I got to see parts of the island that none of my friends saw. I was taking buses to like the middle of nowhere. And that was so rewarding. And I feel like that was me. That's how I sort of decompressed from the hospital. It's like sort of walking around the island every weekend in nature by the ocean. Like, I think that's what helped me just release a lot of the stress that I experienced.
Let's take a quick break to hear a word from our sponsors. As a physician, balancing your medical career with a growing real estate portfolio can be challenging. That's where Dr. Doc comes in. They don't just offer loans, they provide tailored financial solutions designed by doctors for doctors. Dr. Doc has already helped customers secure millions fast, headache-free funding for their real estate investments. With their streamlined process, you get quick liquidity, no prepayment penalties, and a soft credit check, meaning no impact on your credit score if a deal falls through. Looking to expand your investment property portfolio? Dr. Doc offers competitive rates and customized options to help you build wealth and diversify your assets. They also offer solutions for consolidating debt or home improvements. Join the thousands of doctors who trust Dr. Doc for fast funding and personalized support. Say goodbye to financial roadblocks and hello to your next investment success. I bet. I'm sure that was such a great time to process and think through, everything that you experienced and what you were looking forward to in the future, and probably, think through vision and what was next for you going forward as you started your coaching business. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think I saw that Jeju Island, it's Jeju, right? I think I saw that. Isn't that like the Hawaii of Korea or something like that?
That's
Isn't it
what
supposed
they
to
say.
be completely gorgeous? Yeah, I thought I saw something about that.
Yeah, it is beautiful. I haven't been to Hawaii actually, so I don't know the comparison, but it's beautiful. It's large. It's a really big island. So if you're going I lived on the other side away from the airport. So you're going to the airport, the bus ride is like an hour and a half. And that's the short part of it goes longer the other way. So it's like a pretty big island. But yeah, it's beautiful.
That is cool. Yeah, I would love to do that sometime. Well, let's talk about, what was next for you. So you mentioned you're giving yourself 2 years to build up something else. And you're like, hey, let me find kind of entry-level job. Obviously, teaching English is not entry-level and it is incredibly important, but you're like, hey, let me have those 2 years and get established and start my next thing. So what did that path look like? How did you figure out that coaching was going to be the path forward for you?
Yeah, so that started to develop even before I left for South Korea. That actually started to not necessarily just coaching, but the things that were coming to me were writing. I loved writing. I wanted to write. And then traveling, obviously that was part of it. And then personal growth in some way. And I didn't quite know about coaching yet, except I did, but maybe I forgot that I knew, because actually when I was transitioning from med school to residency, I don't know why we have a bubble coming up, but my hand gestures sometimes make it do things. I was transitioning from med school to residency and feeling a lot of what I'll describe is I felt like I was on a conveyor belt headed towards a trash compactor with no way to get off. And so I felt like residency was like this impending doom where I was going to be squashed like a car into a compact ball. And there was no way out. That's what it felt. And so I'm dealing with this as I graduate med school, even though matched to my top choice residency, there was nothing about it that I didn't choose. It just felt like, and then my sister was working with a life coach at that point. And she was telling me about it. And I was like, what is this? What are you doing? So I actually did work for a few months with this life coach that my sister recommended to me. And we just emailed. We just had an emailing thing. But then I remember at one point she sends me an email and she's like, yeah, I'll still be responding to your emails this week, but I'm in Rome, so it might be during a different time. And I was like, wait, one, we're talking about really cool things that I'm interested in. We were kind of going through this one book and doing the book together, and she's helping me do the exercises. So it's already this is a really fun conversation. I'm paying you to do this and you're traveling. What are you? So I think I had a moment then, but just promptly forgot about it for like a year and a half until then I'm leaving. And then it kind of hit me again, like, oh, she did that. Like, that's a thing. So then like coaching is part of my world. But I think travel blogging is like my first thing for some reason. I'm like, I want to travel. I like writing. I'm going to travel. So in my mind, it's some version of travel blogging and coaching, but I don't know how those will go together. But I'm like, I think they just go together somehow. So I started my blog even before I left for South Korea. I started my blog and I would write every week. And then I started my coaching certification. So it was all starting to happen in the background. But I quickly realized I do not like writing about travel. I don't like giving people directions like how to get to the trailhead or what, I was like, I don't care. I liked writing about just like deeper stuff and like philosophical stuff. So I was like, I love writing. I do love traveling. I don't like them together. But I kept my blog, I kept writing, and then I was doing my coaching certification and coaching people. And so then it just sort of didn't feel like a decision as much of the evolution to like, well, I'm going to have my own business and it's going to be blogging and coaching. Yeah. So that's just what I was starting to work on in the background while I was in South Korea.
That is cool. Yeah. Well, what a cool exposure, initially. And that does sound awesome to be like, hey, I'm going to travel in Rome and sorry, I'll be a little bit late, but let me keep in contact with you. That flexibility and freedom is a lot of what folks are looking for. And I know that you're all about developing a mindset of freedom. And so that is really cool. While you were in South Korea, how did you start laying the foundation for the business? You mentioned you started coaching for free to the English teachers, but how else did you start going? And what were maybe some initial pitfalls or difficulties that you faced starting your business?
So I did the coaching, right? And that was huge. I cannot recommend enough how important it is to just get started and just start taking action, because we can get in our heads. We can think like, okay, well, what is the program I'm going to offer? Or what is my niche going to be? And like, I did not know any of that. And I'm just putting myself out there and like showing up and like talking to people. And actually what's interesting is the first few clients I got were from the travel blogging course that I took, because in the travel blogging course, I was really active in the Facebook group because I was like, well, I basically have no friends now because I left residency and no one there is friends with me anymore. And that's totally fine. That makes sense. So I was just sort of like, I need community. So I was just weirdly active in this Facebook group. And then I just started connecting with people and like reading all their blogs. And from doing that, I built connections with people who were kind of trying to develop themselves. And then once I started doing coaching, I asked them, do you want to do a free coaching session with me? And then a lot of them actually turned into my first clients. And
that is awesome.
Yeah. So I would say for laying the foundation, I cannot emphasize enough. The foundation is just you taking action. Like you just go. I didn't have like a business bank account or an LLC. I didn't have any of these things set up. I was like, okay, I think they could just pay me on PayPal. Like I just started putting myself out there and asking people to work with me without having any clue what my niche was or any clue what I was doing. And so I just feel like that's so important. I was like, what's it called? Like absorbing everything I could about business. So on my way to and from school every day, I would be listening to podcasts of like just online business stuff. So I was like learning a lot of stuff there, but you could do that and not make any progress if you're not taking action. So I would just say the biggest thing I did was just like put myself out there repeatedly, log out every week to like that was huge, right? Committing to putting out one piece of long form content every week. I'm sure you feel this with putting the podcast out, like any sort of commitment to creating content regularly and putting it out into the world that develops muscles and skills within you. So that was huge. I think most people, if you want to have an online business, any sort of personal brand based online business, you need to also be a content creator. And so you really do need to learn those skills.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I feel the same way about long form and just consistency. And, I think, and I'm really glad you mentioned, I think a lot of times folks think they have to, have the perfect name for their business and set up their LLC and know exactly what they're going to offer and become viral TikTok stars and all the above just to get started, right? And you're living proof that that's not the case. And my buddy, Brian Lubin, he started Action Academy. He did the same thing. He just put himself out there and he created this course because he's like, hey, I think after I did all these free coaching calls, this is what people want. He sent out an email and was like, hey, here's a course that I put together. I think it was like 40 or 50 hours. And he said, next thing he knows, he made $100,000 through PayPal. And he's like, oh, I don't think this is how I'm supposed to do this. But he did it. He just had the consistency and he just took action. And that's what's so important because as doctors, we want to know all the facts, right? We want to know all the information, we want to know all the data and try and make an informed decision. But you just have to be willing to trust yourself and trust the consistency and the grit that you had to get into medical school and get through residency and become an attending or whatever that may be. You had to have that grit and consistency. You can totally, make a successful business as well if you just continue with those steps, but you have to take action.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you're bringing up such a good point where like there are certain parts of like your doctor brain and the skill sets that are incredible for business. And there are parts of your doctor brain that are going to sabotage your business. So it's like really knowing when, what I tell my clients, like you need to know when to tap into your med school energy and when to let it go. And med school energy for me is like dogged determination, consistency, show up, like I'm going to get it done. And that's great. That's like a really important thing. But then perfectionism and like, trying to get the right answer and trying to, I'm like comparing it to med school because that is what feels most relevant for me, but like trying to do the right thing to get honors on a rotation and like calibrate, you're trying to cater yourself to like a rubric or a algorithm or whatever it is and like getting approval and validation from other people. It's like, that is not it for medicine. You have to like approve yourself for entrepreneurship. You have to put your own approval in yourself and no one's going to tell you that it's the right thing. So you just have to decide.
Yeah, I completely agree. And you have to just keep iterating and trying again. And what I tell folks too all the time, the worst thing that can happen is your present day reality, right? Worst thing that happens is I bet on myself and I go be an entrepreneur and maybe cut back from medicine a bit. Or I decide, hey, I'm going to quit medicine completely and I'm going to bet on myself and I'm going to build this business. Worst thing that happens is just go back and become a physician again. Like there's plenty of jobs. There's that you could also go teach English in South Korea and still, survive and thrive. And so there's so many opportunities out there that you don't have to be so fearful of what's the other side look like.
That's such a good point where it can be kind of confronting to be like, actually, you're in your worst case scenario.
Yeah, that's true.
But it's true. Like, I mean, maybe it doesn't feel like a worst case scenario. Maybe it's fine, but you know how to get back here. You're good.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, I know that you built up the coaching business, and what was the initial, you're starting to get paid clients and you're starting to grow the business and you're learning all these things. Did you hit a point where you're like, hey, I made it. Like I have arrived where I wanted to be. I've hit my goals. Now I'm able to leave that job teaching English and just fully go all in on the business. What was that like for you?
Okay, so I did it messier because I'm me. So I actually just left the job after the first year because I was like wanting even more freedom, right? I got greedy with my freedom, but I had my weekend freedom and I was like, this is great. And I don't want to necessarily just be in one place from 8:30 to 4:30 every single day. And so I was starting to get restless, and wanting to go and do something different. So I actually found out you can teach English online as well, right? So there was a point where I had like 3 jobs where I was teaching in person, starting to teach English online to build up my students, and then doing coaching and stuff on the side. So then I left the in-person job because I was having this other side income. And then I even graduated that found this really niche company that teaches, it helps Chinese students who are like going to boarding school in the UK, and it's mostly the UK, who are doing really advanced things. So I was actually teaching AP Bio to Chinese students to go to boarding schools. Like it was a very odd situation, but it totally worked. And it was fairly good pay for what I was doing. And so that was my side thing for a while. And I was able to do that. I did that, I think, until 2022. So that was almost like 2 years after I even left South Korea. So it was really a 3-year time period where I had other sources of income supporting me alongside my coaching business. And then, early 2022, I can't remember why I decided, because it's not that I had fully made it income wise. I had some really good months and then some months not so much, but I was like, you know what? I just want to leave this teaching job and I'm just going to go full in on the business. And then I did that in January of that year. And then that was my first 6-figure year, like 6 figures in revenue. And so I guess that would say it when I feel like I made it, but I don't know if I feel like I made it vibe, not in a negative way. It's just like, I've always just been doing it, like I just get to, like, I think just anytime I'm like working with people and they're paying me and I love what I'm doing, that feels like I made it, because what else do I want? Like someone to pay me to do something I love and then they get benefit too. Like what else could I want?
Yeah, that's a much better answer. Yeah, I think you probably made it when you got on that plane and you started heading to South Korea. I think that's probably when you really made it. And but yeah, it's so cool to just hear your journey. And it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like you've had a lot of unique opportunities come your way and you're just like, hey, I'm just going to try this and see what happens and trust it's all going to work out. And I'm going to keep working on these other things in the background. And these are just going to be awesome experiences, even if they don't work out, that I'm going to have that's going to add to my knowledge and my experience down the road.
Yeah, I think I have a very flexible relationship now with like money and earning money. And I don't have a sense of, I need this one job to pay me this salary to this thing. Like, I just am feeling like, what are my income sources and like which ways are the money coming to me? And yeah, it doesn't feel like I need to control it in any one way. It's like, I just can sort of trust that it's coming in while I'm sharing my gifts. And it just feels a lot more freeing.
That is so cool. It's so cool to hear, the passionate income that you have and that you just love what you're doing and helping others. And, I feel like as physicians and just entrepreneurs, like we feel so much more fulfilled when we're helping others and when we're serving others. And so when we can tie those two together, it's just absolutely beautiful. And that's what we love about assisted living. So we invest a lot in residential assisted living. And we love that because you can invest in an incredible asset class, but you can also provide exceptional care for seniors who need it most. And you can't get that anywhere else in real estate investing. I mean, you're not going to like go buy an apartment building and feel that same fulfillment. And so it's something that I would encourage folks to think about, like, how can I blend my passion with service and make money as well, of course, and go from there. So it sounds like you're certainly doing that with your thriving coaching business.
Yeah. I love that you're doing that, because it's not just like, it becomes not just real estate. There's like a deeper meaning behind it. And I think where there's that meaning, it's like something that deeply matters to you. There's like a values alignment. There's just more of a pull and more of a fulfillment that happens.
Yeah, absolutely. We talk a lot about how you can have growth, freedom, and purpose all within that one asset class. And yeah, absolutely love it. But no one's here to hear about me. They want to hear more about you. So in regards to the coaching business, what does that typically look like for you? I know that you're living the digital nomad life. So tell us a little bit more about what that looks like, although it sounds like settled down a little bit in Mexico City. But tell us a little bit more about that and the freedom and flexibility you have with coaching. And if you don't mind also just sharing what it looks like to work with you as a coach.
Yeah. So we'll do just like lifestyle first, because I think this is, when I look at the life I'm living now, it is actually exactly what I dreamed of when I was in residency. So when I was in like my point of burnout in residency, I did a phone call with a physician burnout coach. And she asked me like a very standard coach question now, where she's like, if I had a magic wand and, you could have anything you wanted, like, what would your career look like? And the things I described, I was like, well, I want like a spacious morning. I want to wake up and be able to meditate without having to get up at 4:30, and I want to just, have time for me in the morning in a relaxed way. I want to go to a cafe and like work on a laptop and then like, I like what I'm doing. I don't know what it is. I like it. And then I can go anywhere. Like, I just described kind of simple actually, but it felt like wildly out of reach. And that is my Tuesdays or my Wednesday. That's just actually my day-to-day reality right now, which is so cool. And then there's things I didn't even know to ask for that have happened as well, where it sounds unreasonable. Like I feel like I've done an unreasonable amount of bucket list experiences for my age. I turned down a trip to the Northern Lights this January because I was like, I just did a bunch of bucket list things and I think I need to space them out.
That's a great problem to have. What are some of those bucket list things that really stood out for you?
Yeah. So last year was just incredible year. And I think that's when I started, I was like, I need a little stability, because I was just traveling around. So last year I went to the Bolivian salt flats. I went hiking in Patagonia in like Argentina. I didn't do like the W trek, but I was like hiking, and I lived in Patagonia for like 7 weeks and was like immersed there and hiking like every day. So cool. Then what else did I do? Oh, I went to Mongolia and I lived with the like Kazakh people in their yurts, and I got to talk to them about, we had a translator and like a guide, and we got to ask them, we got to sit down with its family because we were staying with them, and we got to sit down with them and ask them questions. And so the question I asked them was like, what is your biggest source of stress? Because I was like, do they have stress? Like, is stress a thing? And it took them a bit to like translate it, because I think stress is not quite the concept. But then his response was a one word. He literally just like through the translator said, winter. And then he was like, hurting animals in the winter.
Wow. Yeah. And that's probably not a source of stress for a lot of, us in America, because we're just stressed about so many different things and worried all the time. That is wild. That's such a cool experience. And Patagonia is on my bucket list for sure. So once that happens, I'm going to wait till the boys are a little bit older and they'll remember it. We have a 4.5-year-old and a almost 1-year-old. And so once they're older, that'd be a really good family trip to do. But yeah, we just love being outside. We live in Colorado. And so we're, always in the Rocky Mountains, and we're getting ready to go to Yellowstone Glacier and the Tetons. And it's just like, hey, it's just such a beautiful world that's been created, and we need to explore it. And something about just being out in nature and having that time and that freedom to reflect and think and just be present is amazing. So I'm sure you felt the same way in Patagonia and on your journeys as well.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things too, it's like, I love like disconnecting and unplugging. Like when I was in Mongolia, I unplugged. I also like in the same year, I went trekking in Nepal and I like unplugged for that. And so like that was incredible. But then I also love sometimes like just working from a beautiful place. And it's like, actually, that adds a lot to me. Like not just being there on vacation and recreating, but like also being there and then doing a client call and feeling like I'm contributing something and then going back to enjoying myself. Like it just feels like this integration where I feel like my life would be less if I was just for some reason fully funded and not working and just traveling. Like there's something about actually working and creating an output in a way that's passionate. And while doing these things, it all just like makes it all just more meaningful.
Yeah, I feel the same exact way. We did about 3 weeks camping about 3.5 weeks camping last fall. And it was an amazing trip. We went out to Yosemite and Great Sequoia and Kings Canyon and all these incredible places. And my wife, she's an entrepreneur as well. And she's absolutely amazing. But we realized we were kind of getting like a little bit stir crazy because we really just tried to completely unplug, which is amazing. But then we realized, hey, like, it's okay to do a little bit of work. And then same thing, we found like, hey, this is like kind of nice. The kids are sleeping in the camper. We're outside by the fire, like just cranking out some work on our laptops for a couple hours. Like this feels great. So we did decide to get Starlink for this trip. And we're like, okay, like when the kids are down and we're feeling that urge, we'll just open up the laptop and get some work done and go from there. Cause I feel like I'm that type of person that's always going to build, always going to work. Like I'm never going to be the guy who's like laying on the beach sipping Mai Tais just forever. I want that freedom and flexibility to go to the beach on a Tuesday and sip Mai Tais if I want to, and so that's what I'm striving for, in terms of my freedom and really headed towards that direction, which is awesome. But yeah, I love that. I think something about creating, working in a beautiful environment and having that freedom and flexibility to be active and be in nature and then come like get work done. And it's crazy how productive you can be too when you've kind of been refreshed and rested and then, hit the work hard for a couple hours. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool. You're not like, it's not a pressure to do it, but it's like, I could do it and it would enhance things to do it. And, like there's just it's just extra.
Yeah, absolutely. That is awesome. Well, I want to be respectful of your time. I know you have a awesome virtual summit that's coming up here soon. Tell us a little bit about that and then how folks can reach out to you and connect with you if they want to do coaching with you or learn more about what you do.
Yeah. So I'm hosting a virtual summit. It's the first annual one, but I anticipate it being something that happens very frequently. And it's called Pivot Potentials. It's a career reimagining summit for healthcare professionals. The reason I created it is because I kept getting questions like, what are my options? Or like, I'm here, I want to be able to do this, but I feel stuck. I just kept getting this sense of stuckness from people I talk to, people like, physicians in Facebook groups, in like from my podcast. It just feels like people, like you talked about earlier, like there's the golden handcuffs, there's physical reasons, emotional reasons, whatever it is. People just feel stuck. And I was like, there's only so much I can say on one podcast episode or within one blog post or one webinar that can really help people get unstuck. So I was like, I want to create an experience. So to me, it doesn't feel like it's just like a summit. It's not people coming to just like talk at you. Not that that's what summits are, but it's not like a series of disjointed lectures. It's like there's a transformational experience that I am creating. So day one is Careers Uncaged, where we look at all of the things that are keeping you stuck and we just hand you a key to like unlock it. There's a quote that's like, we're all living in cages with the doors wide open. And I really think that's how most of us are. We like think we're in cages. We've built up these cages, but if we just dismantle some of the things that we've put there, we see we're actually free. So day one, uncaged. So I have speakers coming in to talk about like being uncaged from money, being uncaged from your degree. Like everything that we think is holding us back is actually a portal to moving forward. Okay, so that's day one. We're getting uncaged. Day two is Careers Reimagined. So now that we have freedom, right? You can kind of open up into this new horizon. What do you do with it, right? When I was in South Korea looking at all my weekends. It's like, what do I do with it? I had to reimagine my weekend. So I got this hiking project to do, right? So it's like we're reimagining what actually could you do with your career? We're reimagining your definition of success, your relationship to work, your relationship to money. There's just like all of these things we get to reimagine what we thought was a linear path. Like, does a career need to be in this one trajectory where you like get a degree and then just go? Like, can we redefine it? So we're reimagining everything on that day. On day 3, which is the final day, I want to make it really applicable and like really want to bring it home. And so what we're doing is it's like a career storytelling experience. So I kind of picture it like we're by a fire. I don't know if you've ever been to a storytelling night, but I've been to some, and like it's actually really magical what happens where there's just so much like resonance in people's stories. And so people are going to be sharing stories of just like how they pivoted, right? It's like pivot potentials. We're reimagining how they pivoted, how they reimagined. They're just going to share their real-time stories. And so we have multiple storytellers on that day. And the goal is just like, you can see through other people's like messy lived experience that this is also possible for you.
That sounds amazing. Pivot Potential Virtual Summit. It's going to be mid to late June, it sounded like.
Yeah. June 20th through 22nd. It's totally free to sign up. All I want is for people to get unstuck. I literally just want people to know they can pivot, know that there's options, know that there's a way out. And I want to elevate the conversation around careers in the physician space, because I think the conversation is so limited and so narrow and scarcity focused. It's like, it's just like, oh, can I do MSL or could I do you? Like, there's just so many, there's so few, there's not enough imagination. And I just want to elevate the whole conversation so that we realize you can actually do anything. When people come to me and they're like, what are my options? I'm like, I don't even understand the question, because your options are literally anything. What? You're like, you have a graduate degree, you're from a developed country. Like, what do you mean? What are your options? Like, you can literally do anything. And so I just want people to realize that for themselves.
That is awesome. Well, I'm excited to hopefully attend. I think we're going to be in Germany during that time frame doing some traveling. So hopefully I'll be able to attend that summit. But I think that is an incredible opportunity for folks. And I think that those are the rooms that you want to be in, right? That summit, being surrounded by people who are going to build you up, who are going to show you that these things are possible, is where you need to be. And that's the only way that you're going to get unstuck. That's the only way you're going to have that encouragement and that accountability to take action and get going and get started on this incredible journey towards freedom. So you're an amazing example of that. And this has been an incredible, incredible conversation. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, I've had so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks. Well, with that, it's been Chelsea and Alex with another episode of the Physicians and Properties podcast, signing off. Hey, real quick, if you're still listening to this, I'm assuming you got value from it. So I need your help specifically. My 2-year vision with this podcast is to help 100,000 physicians learn how investing in real estate can give you the freedom to practice medicine and live life how you want. There are 2 main ways that a podcast grows. One is through ratings and reviews, and the other is word of mouth. If you can please leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, as well as send this to 1 to 2 friends that you think would get value from it, we can reach the physicians that we want to reach. Thanks in advance, and talk to you on the next episode. Please note that the information shared on this podcast is for informational purposes only. It should not be considered financial, medical advice. The views expressed on this podcast are those of the host and the guest and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Department of Defense or the United States Air Force.